Welcome to the Moose Club. Be sure to like, follow, share, subscribe this video at the Moose Club on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and also find us on Spotify. Today's episode will be around the recent slew of presidential pardons. We will talk about how basically he just pardoned everybody involved in the Russia investigation and, a bunch of other questionable people. So we'll get into that. Bork, I know you have talked about these pardons and where you want to see even more pardons from the Trump administration. Maybe you see a line of where they're going with certain people. Do you have any opinions on the pardons that have already happened?
Well, it's as kind of an aside note, it's interesting to note that as Trump proceeds to pardon people at the last hour, his administration is also executing people at a phenomenal rate. Liz Bruning actually wrote a piece in the New York Times about attending one of these federal executions and just how much that process has been restarted and sped up in the last days of the Trump administration as far as executing prisoners on death row.
I thought he was for criminal justice reform.
Well, I thought we had pro-life people on the Supreme Court as well. But
all right, continue.
that's again as an aside. So seems that he's he's a pardoned Roger Stone, Paul Manafort now, Kushner's dad, who is hilariously referred to as Ivanka's, father-in-law. Yeah, Kushner's dad, who even more hilariously, Chris Christie put his ass in jail.
I did see
which
that,
is
yeah.
just guess who saw his way out the door as Kushner saw his profile rise in the Trump administration. And then the most egregious pardons are obviously the Blackwater employees who have more or less committed war crimes in Iraq by just outright opening fire on, unarmed children, essentially. It's, I don't know. I mean, obviously it does have its defenders, but it's tough to see that how something like that improves the US's image or position in the Middle East by letting people who have killed, I think the number is 17 unarmed civilians in Iraq. Just absolutely horrific. And then to see them pardoned is, just right on par. Where I would,
they're the tough guys.
Yeah,
Isn't that his thing?
Not a lot to be said on those kinds of pardons. Like, he's just letting out all the absolute scumbags that he brought into office with him and lied to FBI agents at one point or another, or were involved in something just blatantly criminal. That Papadopoulos, yeah, he also got the pardon. The one who maybe, I don't know to what degree he was, but him and Flynn's already been pardoned, but like him and Flynn and Papadopoulos are maybe the only ones who could potentially have been, like, I don't know. Manafort probably got a lot of money from some shady people, but so did Trump. So it's kind of a wash there. But between that, like, that's given the kind of scumbag that Trump is himself, like, obviously he was going to give an out for all the people who, were the true loyal soldiers and didn't narc on the way on up.
Not Cohen.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't see a pardon for Cohen here, but
I think that's one of the things I find. I I think you hit the nail on the head where there's like two groups of and like two different interpretations of the people that he's pardoned. Like the Blackwater, people that were involved in that. I don't know how you sell that. I don't know how anybody could, agree with that. Side note, we did talk about this earlier that Ben Sass, Republican governor or senator from Nebraska, came out and said that these pardons were absolutely just unexplainable. I can't remember the exact verbiage he used, but basically just, I think it was rotten to the core, I think was the verbiage of it. So, but those, the Blackwater scandal, but then also to start, just peeling off people to have any reason to talk to the feds after he is not president to find out even more what happened in the Russia investigation or just any kind of dealings. To start pardoning those people, I think that has to speak a lot to where he thinks his weak spots are with, investigations after he is not president. So I do agree with what you said. The Charles Kushner thing, I don't know how you don't look at that and just say that was Jared Kushner like lobbying to his father-in-law to use his or abuse of power to, pardon his own.
Yeah, get his dad out of jail. Yep.
You look at there's a Netflix series, Dirty Money, that has a Jared Kushner.
Oh, Kushner's dad is a piece of shit.
You look up what that could. Even Jared, even just the whole Kushner business is so shady. But yeah, Charles Kushner is just a piece of shit.
Yeah.
So, Schmidt, do you have anything to add about the pardons that have already happened?
Yeah, the things that I think about it is what kind of precedent does this set? Now, I do think that if we were to look at it from like a general public point of view, which is where I like to take things, normally the media, if we do have a pardon, like when we had the shorter Michael Flynn pardon, and there was another pardon, I couldn't remember what it was. It only happened 2 at a time, and the media was able to pick apart, what this guy did. CNN or Fox News could ignore it or address it. What he's doing now is we're getting a bunch of pardons out in a hurry. We're dumping them, and we're not able to look at them all as from a public point of view. We may have even no idea what's going on with these guys, and we can't individually get told what they did and why they're getting pardoned, which brings me back to what precedent does this set? Are we going to have presidents from now on that we pardon people when they're getting investigated, like they're part of an investigation looking at me, and now they can lie to federal officials knowing that eventually they'll get pardoned for their crimes? This screams an even bigger alarm to me, the fact that we're setting the precedent that people have protection to lie to federal prosecutors and to the court. And so when I look at this as a bigger picture, he's throwing these pardons into a big pile. You got to find which one that you didn't like. And then by the next week, he's either going to be gone and we're not talking about this anymore. And then the next president will get ridiculed. If Biden were to do this at the end of his presidency for Hunter Biden, oh, you couldn't even imagine the type of drama, and he's protecting his own and he's covering up his own, he's saving his own ass. So
Yeah,
I think this brings a terrible precedent.
I never thought about the Hunter Biden, comparison there. Like, yeah, that would cause like a shitstorm.
But you don't hear the media, like, your right-wing media talking about, hey, I don't know if I really like this one, or what is the future of presidential pardons after this?
Yeah, and that's somewhere I want to go next, but I know that book.
I would just push back on the notion that this is a precedent of pardoning very criminal acts. I think we just have to go back to Reagan and Iran-Contra. That it was pretty clearly a massive cover-up pretty much all the way up to the vice president's office, who eventually ended up pardoning all the people involved with it, which was essentially, funding elaborately through, essentially against Congress's explicit orders against doing it, finding an elaborate way to do that to fund death squads in Central America. That is, you can say that it's to a different degree because it's not a U.S. contractor, but giving the funds to CIA death squads in Central America and, pardoning those people because they did so in the sense of being patriotic. Well, that's, that seems to me like at least the beginning of the dangerous precedent that was set, aside from like what Nixon did. I don't think anybody is quite, you can say what you want about Nixon's pardon, but like it was just, I don't know, kind of the first time we had ever really kind of like, okay, this guy is definitely a criminal because we have him on tape doing it. So he just has to resign now.
So you're saying there's no, like, this isn't just a new precedent. It's happened in the past, but I don't know that this is going to be something that's going to be in the future as covering up federal prosecutions is what I'm legitimately worried about. If there's you don't have a tool to use for the person that you are interviewing to find if someone else committed a crime or not, because you have immunity. You get an immunity in all these cases if you are protecting someone who may have committed or was lawless, like Trump was. You have Cohen, who basically came out and said, I'm going to tell the truth about the payments from the Trump campaign, and he's going to go down because he didn't protect him and he was telling the truth. He had his own fraud that he has to pay for, but
that is the risk that you potentially run with like that kind of system in place. It's just, that power has kind of always been there. I think the problem is when you get someone like Donald Trump in the position of power that is the president, like when you're that far gone, like you're the problems are just magnified to an infinite degree, because in reality no one should have as much power as the president, let alone someone as unserious and like obviously a criminal as Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think
so. Like something is kind of, something is broken that weeds those lunatics out of the process before they get that far. I think
there's no check and balances to the presidential power.
I think that's kind of where
pardon power.
I do want to go next. One thing I do want to add just to what you said, Schmidt, was, it is usual the last couple of days of the presidency that they do unleash a pretty good slew of pardons. I remember one even with Obama that I disagreed with was Chelsea Manning being pardoned. So yeah, it's not always you will agree with all of them, but like I can rationalize Chelsea Manning's release a lot more than I can rationalize somebody like Scooter Libby getting pardoned, somebody like the Blackwater group getting pardoned. There was another military person a couple months ago that got pardoned for, just obvious war crime offenses. So, but I know I've talked about this with Bork before. Where do you see any future of the changing of pardon powers, or is it just a one-off thing of saying like, obviously a serious politician isn't going to be this reckless. Like Obama could have pardoned Hillary if he really wanted to, but he wasn't going to, muddy the waters of that by doing it. Do you see a future where we might mitigate the power of the pardon, or Is
I
it?
think the question you're asking me is, are we going to see much of the same? Is this the direction that politics are going, to where honor
I
is
think.
sacrificed for party?
I think
Or
I'm saying is do you think that anybody will make amends or change the power of pardons? Like,
changing the presidential power, that's a constitution issue, and that is going to be extremely controversial. I don't see any changing to it, to be honest with you. I think the only way that you can defend yourselves, the only checks and balances you have against presidential power, pardon power, is that you disagree so much with who we pardoned that you don't vote him in the next election. That is the only defense that we have as people if we disagree with his pardons, or else it's almost a limitless power. And like I said, I would love to see something that would, if you're getting investigated, you should almost have to abstain from being involved in something that involves you. You shouldn't be able to pardon someone when it involves something that you did or are accused of doing. You should let the law run its course. So I don't see any changes coming from it, though, honestly.
what do you think, Bork?
No, yeah, I don't imagine any major changes will be coming to the pardon process. Um, yeah, I think it's exactly right. It is just too, you don't know when you might need the political pardon, for your party or whatever. Um, I I do think it's just the presidency does have too much power, and obviously that's been abrogated by the legislative branch to a big degree. But I mean, it's not a problem that the president has the ability to pardon people. I don't think. I mean, I think that the argument of the presidency, aside from having a check on the judiciary, like that there are good reasons to pardon people sometimes. So like I'm not, fully against that. Like obviously I'm against the Trumps of the world getting in the presidency in the first place. Obviously, like if someone like that has, so many criminal people around him. I mean, that's the thing, like you don't have to look too hard at any part of Donald Trump's, you know, his campaign, you know, anything with Russia. Just look at his finances and you're going to find something criminal there.
Right.
I mean,
We stopped voting on character, is what I think the problem is. If
well, I mean,
you don't have to worry about the pardon if you vote, you think your president has a good character. Granted, it could still happen, but the lack of honor, the lack of character is what we put into office, and we knew that. We sacrificed it for the businessman, for draining the swamp. Man, get him out of there. But
well, there are people he could pardon though that would be
That's
like
where I want to go
acceptable
next.
people.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, to holding American values, I mean, he could pardon like the whistleblowers from his administration that he prosecuted. You know, the next people he should probably pardon Snowden and then Julian Assange. And the reason being that like, he obviously doesn't care about like the freedom of press or whatnot. But his rationale would be that it would just absolutely piss off everybody that he loves to piss off. That's why he would do it. Not because he has any commitment towards, the freedom of press. That's why I'm saying that like obviously he should pardon the people that he prosecuted. Well, he's not going to do that. So like it's the only reason he would pardon Snowden and Assange are just to piss off,
The deep
the
state.
Obama people pretty much and the incoming Biden administration.
So I think we've had our discussions about Snowden before. We've never really talked about Assange. Um, I could almost rationalize a Snowden conversation. I still think that situation isn't as simple as just whistleblowing of what the NSA was doing. Like, I think he gave up infrastructure that he didn't need to give up. But I think the Julian Assange part, I think that's a whole new thing because Julian Assange is actively trying to finance and assist people that are hacking into US governmental, issues, which give what Snowden did, like I think he did the wrong thing, but like the criminal intent of Snowden is debatable. I think he had a good moral reason for doing it. I think Assange is doing it just to uh, advance, a narrative that he is benefiting from. What do you think?
Well, for Snowden, I mean, you have to like, I mean, the context of the Snowden leaking is important because the information that he was leaking to the American people, like essentially people in the intelligence agencies were lying about it in front of Congress and saying that it didn't exist and wasn't happening. So that's the context that you have to think about the Snowden leak. So I mean, how is if you think your government is doing something wrong and you're trying to run it up the chain of command and you see that you're essentially the top of the tippy top is saying that like, yeah, we don't do this, when you fucking do, I mean, what other option do you have at that point?
Right.
I mean,
No, and
that
I
like just blatant criminality by your government. I mean, and you can say that that process what has been reformed in a way that now aligns with the Constitution or whatever you want to say
Whistleblower
it.
protections.
Well, not necessarily whistleblower protections, but like court oversight of like the FISA requests and stuff like that.
They ended up finding that that stuff was wrong. I know Edward Snowden talking to Joe Rogan actually pointed to that the fight, like you said, Pfizer warrants or FISA warrants ended up
Right.
being deemed unconstitutional
Well, that's well,
eventually.
that's well. See, that's the thing. Like that was the supposed reform to the program that he was like whistleblowing on
Yes.
to put it within the bounds of like, okay, this is good now.
oversight. Yeah.
Yeah, the oversight that was needed for it, and sure enough, it wasn't. And the issue of Assange, I mean, I mean, given what I've seen from reporters that deal in those kinds of leaks, I've never seen anything reported on him as far as those are concerned than what anybody else tries to do to protect sources with information like that. I mean, I've never seen anybody accuse him of telling or like assisting people in hacking, outright hacking, pointing people in the direction of hacking. Like, I mean, he has like sources that he tries to get information from and encourages them to do stuff like that. But I mean, I've never seen anything that he is, like, I don't know, like a handler trying to coach an asset on doing certain things like that. I've never seen that accusation leveled at him before. So that's why it just seems so absurd that like, yeah, I mean, like someone who will report on everybody's dirty secrets is really annoying, and I can definitely see the advantage of putting them in jail. But
Yeah.
that's if you're purporting yourself to be I don't know, a nation of a free and tolerant press and not one that just is reporting state news, then, you know,
You're
that's a
talking about
tough
Mother
argument.
Russia.
Well, I'm just talking about any country that is for like, oh, well, they just have state media that's bad and just feeds them whatever.
We don't want
It's like,
we don't want people falling out of windows here because they can't speak their mind or find out the truth. I mean,
Well,
I mean, you don't need to fall out. You don't need to have people fall out of the windows in this case. You know, like you just destroy their reputation and
smear campaigns.
label them a spy and just completely disregard them as, you know, any sort of source of good information at all because they're compromised. You know, they have some sort of other agenda.
I think one big aspect of all this is there's a difference between Snowden and Assange. And I pointed to this out to you guys earlier, in my opinion. Once again, coming from the people point of view, we made a movie about Edward Snowden because we almost felt like what he did was wrong, but he was protecting us because what he did was relating to us so closely. And I almost think that I don't know about the most recent polls, but he's probably almost favored a pardon at this point because no intelligent community thinks what he did was wrong. A lot of patriots thinks what he did was wrong, but there's a lot of people that think what he did was the right choice. And that's what matters, in my opinion, to America and who we want criminalized or not. Do we think they were doing the right thing? Do we think that his actions were justifiable? And I think consensus, the majority is starting to lean to the side to where we do agree that Edward Snowden had good moral standing to what he was doing. Whether it was right or wrong at the time is definitely something to be debatable, but we do believe that he wasn't out for himself and that he was trying to be a patriot to our community and to everybody who owns a cell phone, a laptop, who was getting taken advantage of by the government, that we allowed them to have that power. So I think we can more relate as people to the Snowden story compared to the Julian Assange, where that deals in higher level corruption, which we don't see every day and we don't see it affect us every day. So the public perception of the two different pardons, I think we'll see one for Snowden before we do Assange, but I don't know if either one will happen.
yeah, well, I mean, we'll just have to see. But other than that, I think we covered the pardons that Trump has given as pretty much unanimously kind of swampy and ridiculous, and maybe seeing what we foresee the powers of the pardon in the future, and also, uh, just some names that we think are not better, but more reasonable and more logical people to talk about than people that go and shoot unarmed children in Iraq. So, yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe to this video, and we will see you after the holidays. Everybody have a happy holidays, and we'll see you at the New Year.
Merry Christmas.
No, Jesus.